Hey guys, so today is Wednesday, June 19th. I just left the church. You'll see on the Facebook page. I've spent the morning with 19 teenagers, sharing kindness, being a superpower like we know. And this is weird for me because I don't do car things. So y'all bear with me. You hear the rain. It was such a great morning, and I kind of just like stopped to sneak a Subway. Glare on my glasses. That's part of it, you know. Anyway, I don't know. Anyway, so I stopped to grab a quick lunch and just be quiet for a minute. And think about the morning. It was great. I love to work with kids because they're so genuine, and there's so many kids that want to do good and want to do kindness, and in our world today it's hard to find that sometimes. We all get so wrapped up in our day-to-day and our sports and and everything, and sometimes we just forget to just give them time and just to stop and be still and do something for somebody else. And so they were really excited about the project today, and none of them had heard about it, and so that was really cool. So that's why I'm sitting here in the parking lot. Now, what I'm gonna do is I gotta tell you about Jesus has really been working on me since the first of the year, really, about that. I knew he was gonna stretch me, and so we did the retreat, and I don't know if you guys know about it's backwards, but it's Holy Moments book, Matthew Kelly. So Matthew Kelly has sent us 2,500 of these books to put in our boxes. It's Holy Moments, the handbook for the rest of your life. And the funny story is I got a few of these to start with, and at the first retreat we gave some away, and I kept one. 3 actually, and I handed, before the whole weekend was over, I had handed those 2 out as well, and I had one for myself, and so I would read the chapter or 2, and somebody would see it and they would talk, oh, what is this? And so I would tell them about how cool it is, because he's very kind in donating these books to go to the blessing boxes so that we can expand Jesus's footprint. And in the book, it tells you there's a website you can go and you can request 6 copies of the book to pass on to somebody else if you send them $1 a book to pay the postage for those books. So you can get 6 books. And one of the ladies that helps us with the project, Brenda, she had approached them and got the first 1,000 books, and they also gave me $250 for 6 months to continue that as well. And so it's just been a special thing. And so I gave my first book away, and by then I had another box, and so I picked up another one for Dawn, and I would read a couple of pages or a couple of chapters, and it always happened. It just happened that somebody would see it, and or somebody was having a hard time, and so I'd reach in my bag and I'd give them my book. And then I put another one in my bag and read the same first 2 chapters. Anyway, you all get the gist. And so I gave away 6 copies. And so last year when we were going to New Jersey for the walk with Gia, I had a book, one of the last few that I had, and I put my name across it, and or in it, I guess. And I decided I was going to read it on the way to New Jersey. I was going to read it on the flight. Well, it was a scoochy flight, and I ended up sitting like this. But I read the book on the way there and cried most of the way. And then it was an amazing book. It talks about the blessing box. It doesn't name it, but it talks about the butterfly effect. Wow. Y'all know. So then he started pushing on me that I needed to read a chapter and post it to the page. And I'm kind of like, I don't know. you know, and he keeps pushing on me. He keeps telling me, he keeps talking about it. It just pops up in the middle of the night, in the middle of the afternoon, in the middle of the day, driving, doing whatever. You need to read, you need to pass this on. Which I tell you, if for some reason you haven't gotten a copy and you want a copy, if you message me or email me or something, I'll send you one. But anyway, so I left such a great day this morning with these kids, and I don't know if you can tell, but the back of my car is filled. 51 pillows stuffed, and those kids sewed them shut. That's powerful. So anyway, so I'm gonna start this, and there's a prologue and there's a chapter 1, and I guess that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get us to chapter 1, and then try to do it every day. And I guess I'll post it, because I know that me being obedient to what he's telling me will bring the blessings. I hope it brings the blessings to you. I hope I do it in the manner that it's supposed to be, but I think that if I do it in the manner that he tells me, you got to do this, whoever needs it will hear it and we'll go forward. So, Holy Moments, handbook for the rest of your life. Matthew Kelly. So the prologue is, once upon a time there was a monastery deep in the forest. It was full of monks. They were full of joy. That joy was contagious, and the people that traveled from far and wide to visit. One day, a young man asked the abbot why people came to the monastery. Most come looking for answers to their question, the old monk explained. The young man was curious what type of questions people ask. The monk continued, or the abbot continued. They come seeking answers to the same questions all men and women ponder. What should I do with my life? Am I wasting my one short life? Where do I find meaning? How do I get the most out of life? The young man had traveled a long distance to visit the monastery, and as he walked away, the old monk wondered what question the young man's heart was wrestling with. Time passed, and the life changed at the monastery. It was ever so gradual at first. A couple of monks became cranky. They had slowly closed their hearts to God and each other. Other monks became jealous. A younger monk was more handsome and popular with the visitors. Some of the monks began to argue about things of no consequence. The poison of gossip crept into the monastery. Visitors noticed that little by little life at the monastery was deteriorating. They perceived the monks were losing their joy. They noticed the monks were not as kind to each other. And over time they noticed and observed that the monks were growing impatient with their visitors. The seasons came and went, and fewer visitors came to the monastery, until one day the people stopped coming altogether. The abbot rose each morning an hour before his brother monks and sat in the chapel, asking God to give him the wisdom necessary to revitalize the monastery. But another summer came and went, and in the depths of the coldest winter ever, a profound sadness gripped the old abbot's heart. He thought he'd tried everything. For hundreds of years, people had come here longing for a glimpse of God, and the monastery had thrived. What had he done? He was wrapped in guilt and shame. The gap between his faith and his life had widened, and he didn't know how to close it. On the first day of spring, the abbot announced at breakfast that he was leaving the monastery to make a journey. "Where are you going?" Brother Killian asked. "I will visit the hermit in the mountains to seek his counsel on our situation here at the monastery." There was a wise hermit who lived in the mountains 30 miles to the north. People traveled into the mountains to seek his wisdom, and the hermit and the abbot had been childhood friends. But this the other monks didn't know. "When will you return?" Brother Owen asked. 3 days, the abbot replied. "Who's in charge while you're gone?" Brother Fabian asked. "I'll let you decide amongst yourself," the abbot said. His words were still hanging in the air while the monks, when the arguing broke out. There was a time when other monks would have been concerned about him making such a journey, but they were no longer concerned for each other, only themselves. There was a time when one of the others would have offered to accompany him, but those days were gone. The abbot slipped quietly out of the monastery and began his journey towards the mountains. Walking through the forest, in those first miles of his journey, he observed that his heart was anxious. But with each passing mile, he became aware of a rising hope in his heart. As dusk was falling, he came upon a small clearing in the foothills and decided to sleep there for the night. The old monk gathered some wood, made a fire, ate a little bread and cheese, and settled down to sleep. He was startled in the night by the howling of wolves and the screeching of wild parrots. He noticed his heart was racing, but he was not afraid. He didn't fear death. He feared the torture of a life without meaning. Late in the following morning, he arrived at the hermit's cave. The hermit was standing just outside the cave. As the abbot approached, he said joyfully, "I've been waiting for you." And the two men embraced like long-lost brothers. "I have something to ask you," the abbot said. "I know, but that can wait," the hermit replied. "First, I want to show you something." The abbot was possessed by an impatience that surprised him, but he followed his old friend. The two men walked peacefully through the trees, and after about 15 minutes, a fine lake was before them. It was breathtaking. The hermit sat on a large boulder at the side of the lake, and the abbot sat on a smaller boulder next to him. They sat in silence for over an hour, and the abbot felt a deep peace rising in his soul. The lake was clear and still. The surface was like glass, and the sun was reflecting perfectly on the water like a golden disc. The abbot was mesmerized. When the sun had reached its pinnacle, the hermit began to speak. "A still pond reflects the sun perfectly. God is the sun, and you are the lake. When your soul is still and clear, you reflect the truth, beauty, and goodness of God to everyone you encounter. As the day goes on, the wind will pick up, the lake will be full of ripples, and you will barely be able to see the sun's reflection in the water." After a few minutes, the two men walked back through the cypress trees to the cave. As they sat drinking the tea, that the abbot described what had happened at the monastery over the past several years. The hermit listened closely, and when the abbot had finished, asked a handful of clarifying questions. "What have you come here to ask?" was the hermit's last question. "What wisdom do you have for us? How do we rejuvenate the monastery? How can we best serve the people who come to visit?" The abbot asked. "That's 3 questions, the hermit said, with a smile so radiant that the abbot had to look away. "I will answer your 3 questions with 1 answer, the hermit continued. "Go back and tell the brothers the Messiah is among you." And with that, the hermit closed his eyes and slipped into a deep meditation. "The Messiah is among us? What can that possibly mean?" the abbot mumbled to himself, but as he walked slowly down the mountains, the full meaning of the hermit's words took root deep in his soul. Back at the monastery, the monks were growing concerned. The abbot had said he would be gone for 3 days, and he had already been gone 5 days. The next evening, there was still no sign of him. They began discussing what fate might have befallen him. The following morning, Brother Fabian callously suggested he wasn't coming back either because he died in the mountains or because he'd abandoned them for some other life. Just as the sun was setting that afternoon, Brother Bartholomew saw a figure approaching the monastery and cried out, "We have a visitor." It was not a visitor, it was the abbot. He whispered softly to Bartholomew, "Gather everyone in the chapel." The abbot was radiant as he sat before the whole community on a small wooden stool. He looked 10 years younger. The monks could not remember a time where he seemed so fully alive. He told the other monks of his journey and shared with them the message he had received. "This is what I asked the hermit. What wisdom do you have for us? How do we rejuvenate the monastery? How can we best serve the people who come to visit?" The hermit replied, "That's 3 questions, and I will answer your 3 questions with 1 answer. Go back and tell the brothers, the Messiah is among you." The monks were astonished and gasped. From that moment on, they looked at each other differently. They thought of each other differently, and they began to treat each other differently. The monks wondered night and day who the Messiah among them was. Was it Adrian, Bartholomew, Kilian, Owen, Fabian, or was it the abbot himself? As the brothers wondered, they began to treat each other with a renewed kindness and a profound respect. As time passed, the abbot noticed little things. There was a new spirit of cooperation. The brothers praised and encouraged each other. Compassion and forgiveness returned to their hearts, and they were kind to each other. These little things, these holy moments, breathed new life into the community. The monks were flourishing. The monastery was flourishing. Even the flowers in the field and the cows in the barn seemed happier. And then one day it happened. The visitors returned. At first, it was just one or two visitors like it had been in the past. But then they brought their friends, and their friends brought their friends. Those that came to visit the monastery noticed that the monks were overflowing with joy. They perceived that the monks had a profound reverence for each other. They observed the monks' unquenchable patience for their visitors. In a few short years, the monastery had been transformed from the brink of collapse and was thriving like never before. A village sprung up around the monastery, and the monastery became the center of life for the people of the village. The monks loved the people, and the people loved the monks, and they all lived together in harmony and happiness. One Saturday afternoon, the old abbot was sitting on a bench in the courtyard, looking gratefully toward the mountains, when a woman approached. Sitting down next to him, she asked, "What happened here?" The old monk beamed his warm, knowing smile and asked, "What do you mean?" "This place has been completely transformed," the woman explained. "No," the abbot disagreed gently. "The place is exactly the same. It's the monks who have changed." "How did it happen?" she asked. "We started living as if the Messiah was among us," the abbot replied. The woman pondered that for a moment and then began to weep. The old monk put his arm around her to comfort her. She told him of her life and troubles. The woman shared with him the question that had been tormenting her soul, a question that had urged her to visit the monastery. They sat in silence for a long time. "What advice do you have for me?" the woman asked, breaking the silence. The two sat quietly for another long moment before the old man spoke, and then he said, "Treat every person you ever meet like the second coming of Jesus in disguise." That's just the prologue. The Blessing Box Project has changed my life. Cancer changed it. But the Blessing Box Project has rejuvenated my life. Because Jesus showed me that kindness matters. That's a lot to unpack in this that we've just read. I'm going to give you 4 more pages. This is part 1. It's called The Awakening. I feel this. More to offer. You have so much more to offer. You sense it. You may have known it for a long time. It's a truth that lingers, waiting patiently for us to pay attention to it. It's a soul sense, and when your soul senses such a thing, it should never be ignored. I wrote in my book, Purpose. You may find yourself thinking or saying, something's missing. There must be more to life. I have so much more to offer. These are sacred truths, but we often treat them as human malfunctions. We think something's wrong. We think we need to be fixed. We view these sacred truths as problems to be solved, and that's a tragedy. When you experience these yearnings, something is very, very right. You're not malfunctioning. Nothing could be further from the truth. Your heart, mind, body, and soul are working together to get your attention. These longings are amazing signs that your whole person is functioning beautifully. When you sense that something is missing, that there must be more to life, or that you have so much more to offer, your intuition has never been so sharp. Claim these sacred truths about yourself. Listen and follow where they lead. Each of these yearnings is a summons to live a more meaningful life, an invitation to live life to the fullest, and a sacred call to become all you were created to be. We crave more because we were made for more. We try to satisfy those cravings with trivial activities and meaningless things. But this foolishness just leaves us exhausted, dissatisfied, and hungrier than ever. These cravings testify in your heart that you were created to strive for more. Toward the end of his life, Michelangelo observed, "I regret that I have done so little for my eternal soul, and that I am but beginning to learn the alphabet of my craft." He was 88 years old and indisputably a genius who had lived a life of astonishingly worldly accomplishment. But what was his regret? Care of the soul. The advantage that you have over Michelangelo is that you still have time to do something about it. How much time? Impossible to say, but not enough time to waste any. So begin today. You have so much more to offer, but to contribute more, to experience life in new and exciting ways, to accomplish things far beyond your accomplishments so far, and to discover who you really are and what you are here in this world to contribute, you need to start paying closer attention to the sacred truths bubbling up in your soul. You were made for more. It's time to find out what the more is, and holy moments will draw out your potential. It's powerful stuff. By no means do I know the answers to all of this, but I can honestly tell you, I knew Jesus before cancer. I did good things before cancer. I helped people. I loved people. I was kind. But I will tell you that my slowdown was in that recliner, recovering, chemo, recovering, radiation, recovering, getting back to the real world. I'm honored that Jesus picked me. Or like the kids' camp was today, I was chosen to be in this moment. So I don't know if me reading this chapter out of the book, I don't know if it'll make sense to anyone. I hope it does. But I'm doing it to be obedient to what he's put on my heart. And I pray that he uses the words that you heard to benefit you. Because this book is great. And I can't wait to share it with you. And I will continue daily to do this in obedience because he told me to. God bless. Let's go do something today. Holy Moments.